Hello, everybody.
Welcome, low ego action heroes, to episode 232 Discover Product, Service, and Experience Opportunities. I'm Debbie Levitt, your host from Delta CX. Hello, Aitan and Ana Lucia. Today, our webinar is a little longer than usual because I'm going to be doing some slides and some pre written things that I did for an entrepreneurial and startup group at an American university a few weeks ago. And I thought that putting it all together was a pretty good little show. And so I wanted to get it on the YouTube channel so that you could share it out with your product teams, a startup you're working with, anybody you think it could be applicable to. So there you go. And before we jump in, as always, I want to thank everybody, past, present, and future paid Patreon members. Not everybody is paid. We also have a free tier, which you are welcome to join. I've seen people upgrading recently. I've seen people downgrading recently. I get it. Times are tough, and I just want to see people being part of the community. The money is extremely secondary. So please join the Patreon, even at the free level. Alrighty. So, what I'm going to do is queue up all my screens and we'll give it a go. And it would look like this. And I know it's white on white. Hopefully, it'll get a little bit better, but there you go. Um, okay, and so great. And I see the chat room as well. And let's see, will the chat room pop up on the screen? No, the chat room won't pop up on the screen, so I'll have to read things out. Some people have said it's a little annoying when I keep interrupting slides to read people's comments. So if you have comments or questions, definitely ask them, and I'll just hold them until a logical place in the presentation. So this is Discover Product, Service, and Experience Opportunities. This is usually where I introduce myself. I think many of you know me, but just in case, hi, I'm Debbie. I've been a CX and UX strategist, researcher, designer, trainer, consultant, and other things for way too many years. Delta CX is my company. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy, happy to take on any kind of projects, training, consulting, or fractional leadership work. We love going into companies and figure out what's not going quite right and help you do things better so you can save and make money. And that's why clients call me Mary Poppins, because I fly in, fix everything I can, sing a few songs, and fly away to where I'm needed next. Note that I tend to say CX and UX interchangeably. I might say CX, you might say we only have UX at our company. When these are done well, they're pretty much the same thing, and I don't want to die on the hill of who's a customer, who's a user, who's a human, who's a whatever. They're in our experience ecosystem. We have to make all these people happy. And since these are my slides, you will see that little cameras come up on the bottom. This is for people who love to screenshot stuff, but totally optional. This will be archived on YouTube. It'll be unlisted for a couple of weeks to go to our paid Patreon members, and then in about 2 weeks, it'll be available to the public. So we've been hearing for years, if not decades, that roughly 90% of startups and new businesses fail. And for years, if not decades, startups and new businesses have been mostly following the same books and methods. How we approach finding product market fit has stayed mostly the same for many years. So it should be no surprise that our failure rate has stayed mostly the same for many years. Not everybody is comfortable pointing out that the emperor isn't wearing any clothes, but it's time. And some of you who've seen my presentations before will recognize a few of the slides. Some are new. So if some of these are reruns for you, just play along and share it with your coworkers who haven't seen it yet. Some of you have seen this one. We tend to approach discovering product, service, and experience opportunities by prioritizing speed. We think we need to hurry up and be fast, as if we're in a race against other invisible companies. We started seeing a lot of failure thanks to these books and methods, but we didn't want to challenge the books and methods. So we started using catchy phrases as excuses for why we're not building what customers would give 5 stars out of 5, like just ship it, often without knowing if it's the right solution for our customers. We'll fix it later. How often do we really fix it later? When is later? What will we have to delay and what will it cost? Why are we releasing something we know is broken and will need to be fixed later? That can't meet anybody's definitions of quality. Users will have to figure it out, or they'll flood you with support tickets, or they'll cancel, leave, or give up. Fail fast. There's nothing cool about failing fast or slowly when real paying or trial customers suffer with your failure. If you're not embarrassed, you shipped too late. Does this mean that our goal is to be embarrassed by our product? Most of us would prefer to feel proud that our product is a great match to customers' needs and tasks. Lean is the least we can do to get us to the next step. Lean disagrees. This is a bastardization of lean that seemed to come from the Lean Startup book. Anybody who has studied Toyota's original approach to lean or Lean Six Sigma knows that lean is about identifying and cutting waste. Fake lean is wasteful and takes us down wrong paths, which means we should cut fake lean for not being lean. Move fast and break things. Sure, only if you fix those things before the public struggles with them. It's good enough for the engineering team, for stakeholders, or for our paying or trial customers. We've been experimenting with speed over quality methods for years now, and it should be pretty clear from our project costs, ROI, customer support tickets, tweets about us, our stock price, and other hints, plus our failure rates, that this doesn't work. We must stop praying to the false gods of speed and give your customers broken things. We must stop using any of these as excuses for low effort or failures. All of this is high waste, not lean, not agile. Quality code for a bad feature that doesn't match customers' tasks or needs is the wrong way to go. Putting band aids on symptoms without fixing core problems is the wrong way to go. Assuming customers are happy with minimally viable ideas that they have to figure out and keep figuring out when you release another experiment is the wrong way to go. We don't stop and seriously consider how inefficient our team is when we're working from guesses. We can build what a co founder or stakeholder tells us to build, but if this isn't based in great target audience intelligence, the risks are high. We could end up being far from agile, lean, or customer centric when we have to make changes, redo things, or in really bad cases, roll back to an old version. How can we know what our target audiences need and what their workflows look like? You might want to use surveys or quick coffee shop interviews to learn what customers want, but this is an early step that can go wrong and send you in the wrong direction. Surveys are often highly flawed, asking people to guess if they would like an idea they haven't seen or predict something they may or may not buy in the future. This isn't good evidence. Strategies and decisions should be based on good evidence and data. Our ability to be customer centric will only be as good as our evidence, data, and knowledge about our target audiences and their journeys, tasks, workflows, and experiences. Our knowledge of our target audiences and their tasks will only be as good as the research that we've done. The research that we've done will only be as good as the planning, methods, recruiting, sessions, and moderator skills, questions and tasks for participants, analysis and synthesis, reporting and actionable suggestions. If any of these have been done poorly or were manipulated by accident or on purpose, then we're setting up strategies and decisions for possible failure. That's the difference between anything we could call evidence and the good evidence we should be using. Survey results are evidence, but results from a bad or manipulated survey shouldn't meet our standards for the evidence and data we'll rely on to inform and guide strategies, decisions, and the direction of products and services. We want to be data informed or data driven, but we shouldn't be driven or informed by bad data. When we run focus groups, surveys, or interviews asking people if they like our idea or would buy something like it, we're setting ourselves up for potentially flawed research. Focus groups can suffer from groupthink or people not wanting to speak up in front of others. Put a personality like mine in your focus group, and your focus group is toast. Absolute toast. No butter on that toast. But more importantly, if we asked people a flawed question like, would they want, use, like, or buy something like a feature we described to them, we might hear a lot of yes. Sure, I'd buy that. Yeah, I'd use it. Of course, my colleagues would like something like that. But what are people saying yes to if they can't try a realistic prototype or live version of this feature right now? Everybody imagines something that would work really well for them, and they say yes. We can't see in their heads. They're all imagining that when we release this feature, it'll be like they imagined, which means there's a high probability of disappointment. Everybody is imagining different executions of different ideas. No, this doesn't mean I want users to sketch their solutions. People are usually poor at designing their own solutions, which we'll talk more about in the next slide. Yes, we should listen to users, but through well planned and executed research done by trained professionals. It's up to great research to learn our target audience's tasks, needs, preferences, and context. We can use that knowledge to design what works best across target audiences and hopefully a better concept than what each person imagined. Here's an example of how asking people to explain their problem or solve their own problem can go wrong. I was once near the gate for my flight when the agent announced that all carry on bags must be gate checked. A woman went to the agent's desk with her large purse and a wheeled bag. The agent hastily handed her a gate check ticket and turned her attention to someone else. I watched the woman attach the gate check ticket to her purse, which she was not going to gate check. When she reached the end of the jet bridge, she saw all the wheeled bags and left hers without the gate check barcode. After the flight landed, the announcement told us to wait in the jet bridge to pick up our gate checked bags. This woman didn't stop. I later saw her at baggage claim without her gate checked wheeled bag. She might have been waiting for it to arrive on the baggage carousel. I have no idea how she and her gate checked bag were reunited or how long that took. What was this customer's knowledge gap? She didn't understand gate checking, and it wasn't intuitive. She didn't understand what to do with the barcode ticket, what to do with her bags, or how to get them later. She might have been a new flyer, not fluent in the language the gate agent spoke, or had never gate checked something before and was new to the process. But she didn't know that she didn't know. She confidently put the gate check barcode on her purse and carried on with boarding the flight. Even I didn't understand this. Do you mean my story or the gate checking? What might this customer request if she were filling out a survey or being interviewed? Given that it probably took a long time for her to get her carry on bag, she thinks the airline is slow. She thinks someone tried to steal her bag. She wants our airline to improve the baggage retrieval system. Since she didn't know that she accomplished the gate checking task incorrectly, she's unlikely to know how to make gate checking better. What opportunity might we miss if we take her suggestions at face value and assume this is what our customers want? The real opportunity here is around the knowledge gap. While there while there might be room for improvement in our airline's baggage handling, we might miss that this problem was really a lack of understanding of the gate checking procedures. We might have all the empathy in the world, but if we don't correctly identify the customer's problem, or we leave it to her to correctly guess her problem and solution, we might never truly solve her problem. I-10 says gate checking. I got confused. There was a lot of checking. Yeah, gate checking. Sorry. So, what about our larger process? I want to talk a little bit about human centered design just in case you're unfamiliar with it or you're sharing this with a coworker who's not that familiar with it. This is the main process that all CX and UX practitioners are using in one form or another. You might see it called human centered design, HCD, or user centered design, UCD. And it's got multiple phases, including research, content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, testing, visual design, and monitoring user experiences once our product is released. And each of those phases has multiple tasks that can be done. CX and UX professionals must approach this process strategically, deciding which tasks are needed, how long they'll take, in what order we'll do them, and what resources are required. Order does matter here since each phase is informed by the phases that come before it. Our research informs everything we do later. Information architecture informs interaction design. I've made this look linear, but in fact it's fluid and usually cyclical. For example, testing our interaction design concepts often leads to iteration. This means another round of information architecture and interaction design work. We should test again before we call this completed. Our work spirals its way to the best design solution. You also hear a lot about models that say things like learn, build, and test. That's an oversimplification considering all of the steps any of us take to learn, build, and test. But learning, building, testing, and improving are baked into the human centered design process. You can also see how models that start with build are missing a lot of early learning we should do if we care about building the right things for our target audiences. You might also hear discover, define, design, validate, and iterate. Double diamond is a derivative of human centered design. Design thinking is a not great and controversial micro derivative of human centered design that has stripped away most of what's really done in each phase and task. But all of the design models or processes that you've heard of can be superimposed onto the phases and tasks of human centered design because they're all derivatives. Like this one. There are many companies, authors, and trainers making wild money trying to sell you on a process. That's the business IDEO got into in 2003. Despite how famous and admired they already were, their core design business was failing in the early 2000s. So they made the decision to create an easy looking version of their process. This was design thinking, and it sells the fantasy that anybody can innovate or solve problems as well as IDEO if you follow these easy steps and do these fun workshops. IDEO made a small and fast derivative of human centered design and sold that as pretty much the way to solve anything. But it doesn't stand up well to critical thinking. I have hours of videos about this on the old Delta CX YouTube channel. My favorite is episode 108 called What Isn't Design Thinking? We went through a number of definitions of design thinking and found that few made sense or were actionable. In short, the more design thinking reduces the process, especially removing our science and technique, the more we increase our risk. We're more likely to rush into poor decisions. Garbage in, garbage out. Looking at this particular infographic, it's easy to see some key flaws and why design thinking has been accused of everything from extreme oversimplification to contributing to white savior bullshit and colonist vibes. For starters, there's a lot of first person here. I have a challenge. I have an idea. Who are we trying to understand or solve a problem for? Ourselves? If I'm not trying to solve a problem for myself, then there is an over focus on me in this infographic. Where is the user in this infographic? That word isn't even on the screen. How will the user be in the conversation, especially if the focus is on my challenge and me, me, me? Another of many problems here is how much theater design thinking added to human centered design and our scientific method. If they're calling good research gathering inspiration, I'm concerned about what that will actually look like or deliver. My research is about gathering evidence, data, and knowledge so that I can inform and influence strategies, priorities, and decisions. Inspire sounds dramatic, and design thinking seems to want that. Meanwhile, we might have done the wrong research, with the wrong people, but feel really inspired by the stories we'll tell each other. All of this concerns me. I was never the target audience for design thinking. I don't need to be sold a fantasy that in a very short period of time I could understand problems and find great solutions. I think of myself as an excellent problem finder and problem solver, but I use human centered design. I do not need a smaller or shorter derivative of a great process. I don't need diamonds. I don't need diamonds redrawn to look like a squid. I'll be talking more about the scientific method later, but let's start by saying it works. We haven't been able to come up with something better in the last, 2,000 or so years. Pretty much every design framework you've heard about is a derivative of human centered design. Human centered design takes the scientific method and details phases and tasks that are more specific to creating products, services, and experiences for all of the possible humans in your experience ecosystem. Most design frameworks try to make human centered design shorter, or they take essentially the same thing and draw a bunch of diamonds or circles. But none of them have invented or innovated anything. Sometimes they've made the process so short and minimized that it barely looks like the scientific method. Perhaps they removed all of the science. Maybe they added some fun games and dramatic storytelling. For a long video applying critical thinking to design thinking, design sprints, lean UX, and other derivatives and workshops, please search YouTube for Delta CX 115. Episode 115 will walk you through many of the problems with these approaches. You'll never have zero risk, but you can reduce and eliminate a lot of risk, waste, and mistakes and bad decisions when you have a better and more thorough process. Here's a visualization generally graphing the inverse relationship between the quality of your human centered design work and the risk of your project, product, or company. The less quality your HCD work has, especially your early research, the riskier this project is. You'd be more likely to waste time or money, make mistakes or bad decisions, and see poor outcomes. The less quality your HCD work has, the more likely you are to struggle to find true product market fit. The higher quality our HCD work has, the longer it takes and the more it costs. This often scares people. If you're prioritizing speed or cheap, better HCD seems like something you might not want. This is why you want to bring in expert CX and UX practitioners. They'll be able to find the balance between the HCD work that should be done and a reasonable time and budget. Zero time and zero money are unreasonable. You're going to have to spend at least some time and money avoiding risks and poor outcomes. This graph may be a bit unscientific, but we know this to generally be true from everything we do in our life. There's a higher risk of misunderstanding when a teacher spends 60 seconds teaching a topic than if they spent an hour or longer. There's a difference between a 1-minute haircut and a 15-minute haircut. And it's not just about time. It's also about the rigor, science, technique, or quality that we put into any of these tasks or projects. A haircut done by someone who has never cut hair before is likely to be quite different from an educated and experienced hairdresser. But here is where I often find most startups. I like to call this point the top of Arrogance Mountain. We've done a little research, probably something fast like a survey, a focus group, or a few coffee shop interviews. We heard some good things, we didn't research further, and we created strategies, priorities, and decisions based on our limited evidence, data, and knowledge. We want to be fast, even when we don't remember why we want to be fast. Even Apple is rarely first to market, and that's on purpose. They want to see Samsung and others work out the bugs for a year or two before Apple tries a version that learns from others' successes and failures. If you're following methods that prioritize speed over quality and you're seeing small or large failures, you're not as fast as you think. You now have to figure out what's going wrong and fix that or pivot towards something different. Now, instead of spending some time and money, you are truly burning time and money. When we use critical thinking here, it's easy to see that fast is not always fast. It can end up being slow, expensive, and drive away customers, investors, and others we were hoping would gleefully be part of our experience ecosystem. What about starting with a hypothesis? You might call it hypothesis driven development or a culture of experimentation. Maybe it's product first or product led. It might be the lean startup approach. It comes under many names and is credited to many different people, but often takes the same form. Start with an idea. That's the beginning. This is our hypothesis. We believe our idea is good, and we will learn if it's good by creating and testing an experiment. This image is from Cohen's hypothesis driven development, and it shows the following process: 1. Idea. 2. Hypothesis. 3. Experimental design. 4. Experimentation. 5. Inference. 6. Pivot or persevere. Pivoting sends you back to cycle around again. The scientific method is often shown as having 5 core steps or phases. 1. Research and observe. 2. Form a question or problem statement based on your research. 3. Create a hypothesis, an idea or potential solution for this question or problem. 4. Design and run an experiment that would show where your hypothesis worked well or poorly. 5. Draw conclusions, report results, and decide what to do next. New variations of the scientific method remove half of the science. So many books, experts, and trainers call for good early qualitative research to really understand people, contexts, and systems. What does our target audience do now? What are they trying to do? How? Why? Where does it go well? Where is there room for improvement? Where are there opportunities to improve or create products or services that solve the real problems we observe? Yet so many current methods rely on skipping all of that. Someone thinks we'll be faster if we just start with an idea and keep testing and iterating until it seems to be good enough. If you're thinking, these models say idea first, but we all know ideas are supposed to come from research or good data. We shouldn't act like these models or approaches are better than they are by making excuses or claiming that they say something they're not saying. If step 1 is idea or hypothesis, and there are no previous steps showing earlier qualitative research or reliable evidence, then it's rather likely that this model suggests idea or hypothesis literally first. That's what it says. Let's not pretend it's different or better than it is. Human-centered design matches the scientific method that we all know and love. Each phase contains multiple tasks that we can do, so I'm just showing a very simple visualization so I can match our high-level process to the scientific method. Step 1 of the scientific method is to research and observe. This matches our discovery phase. We are solution agnostic. We're not researching our idea, who likes it, who wants it, or what would they pay for it. At this point, we're learning about people, contexts, and systems. It's the learn in learn, build, and test. Research leads us to better understand tasks, problems, and perspectives. This allows us to write problem statements from the perspectives of our target audiences. This is scientific method step 2, where we create problem statements or frame a question. Step 3 of the scientific method is our hypothesis. This is the idea or potential solution that would answer the question or solve the problems. These cycles of solution exploration and design are the build in learn, build, test. Step 4 of the scientific method is to design and run our experiment. Evaluative research evaluates an idea, concept, design, prototype, or live product or service. It's called evaluative because we are evaluating if we have solved the problem well. This can be evaluative and usability research on a UX prototype. We don't have to spend days or sprints coding something real just to know if we're going in the right direction. You'll get better information from a more realistic UX prototype, which is why I recommend a tool like Axure over tools like Figma. And step 5 of the scientific method examines our testing data, draws conclusions, and makes decisions about what to do next. Steps 4 and 5 of the scientific method match the test in learn, build, test. Visualizing our high level process in this way helps us see that building before learning doesn't match the scientific method. Evaluative testing of your idea or hypothesis isn't really discovery research and doesn't match the scientific method. Anything that doesn't match the scientific method or waters it down significantly introduces risk and waste. In models like lean startup and design thinking, one of the most dangerous assumptions is that even if our idea isn't correct, it must be close. Models tell us that if experimentation fails, keep iterating and experimenting. But there's an unspoken assumption here. Your idea was close, so try a variation of it. This is where we start seeing teams slightly moving buttons or other elements, changing snippets of text on a page, removing options from the page to push users to take the company's desired action, or adding how-tos and instructions, hoping they can just train people to do things how the company wants customers to do things. Think about famous product and service failures. Were they one iteration away from success? 5 iterations away from success? If they had only iterated for a few more sprints, would they have been successes? When we think about companies who had to pivot or go out of business, they probably weren't just a few iterations or experimentation cycles away from the right solutions. So we have our idea. Is it an opinion, guess, or assumption? Does it have research as a strong foundation? We want to experiment on our idea, but what will we measure to know if our experiment is a success? Are we measuring only business success, things that our company wants to see happen? Will we measure success from users' perspectives? A higher conversion rate or more people logging in might feel like a success, but since neither of those were the goals that our customers had, we shouldn't imagine that we're measuring success from customers' perspectives. And let's say that our experiment shows small or large failures. Do we rush to cycle around again with a variation? Do we understand why we failed? We were probably pretty confident in what we ran as an experiment. Do we know our users so little that something we were confident would work ended up a failure? And what did we learn other than that particular idea or variation didn't work? Did we learn exactly why it didn't work? Do we have more insight into our target audiences or the root causes of their problems? Do we better understand their needs? Be careful of models that say the best method is fast cycles of experimentation. We're often running experiments we shouldn't, we're wasting time and money, we're increasing our risk, and sometimes we're not learning much at all. Hypothesis first approaches are risky and definitely not the scientific method. Let's remember that when our goal is to validate an idea, we can absolutely validate that idea. We can find the people who love our idea, who had the same problems we have, and love the description of our idea or prototype. We can find the people who will say, yes, I love this. Yeah, I need this. And yeah, I'll pay for this. We will tell ourselves, others, and investors that we've validated this idea. Bad ideas are validated many times a day, often by removing any science or rigor from the validation process. We're biased and we're hoping to hear validation. So we accidentally or on purpose design the survey, focus group, or research questions that tell us what we want to hear. Think about all of the startups and companies who failed or pivoted. Think about what they offered. And imagine how you could absolutely validate that failed idea through a survey, focus group, or interview. Take the hypothesis. I assume that surfers need a special app just to coordinate going surfing. Could you validate that? I bet you could. You could definitely plan, execute, and analyze research that proves this is true. Does that make it true? Does that make it good research? A good product idea? Should you build a business around an app that helps surfers coordinate going surfing? No, because people can coordinate an activity using dozens of existing and free messaging systems. We are often putting a solution cart before the research horse. Whether we call it discovery, exploratory, or early generative research, it should be solution agnostic. This would follow the scientific method of doing appropriate research and observations before coming up with an idea, solution, or hypothesis. Don't start by trying to test if your idea might solve a problem. Start by understanding the problem better and what tasks people are trying to do that are problematic. And remember that an idea is a concept in a vacuum. You might validate it, but what about the exact execution of that idea in the contexts of the lives or work of your target audience? This is where our learn, build, test process makes more sense since we're evaluating, validating, or invalidating a specific execution that our target audience can test in a realistic context. I'm often asked how we can tie good or bad research work or good or bad hypotheses to outcomes. Well, during a project, there are a few things that you can watch out for. For example, there's no overarching CX, UX, or product strategy. Sure, we have a to do list of features, but what are we really doing and why? Did we challenge projects with bad or no strategy? Is our strategy about making the numbers for the company, but we have no customer focused strategy? Do we have clear success criteria? Do the criteria mention customer success or only business success? Do we have clear and reasonable KPIs that relate to the work we're doing? Are we measuring anything around how well we solved customers' unmet needs? Another symptom is having no customer focused problem statements. We might have a statement about what the business hopes to achieve, but where is the customer? If you lack problem statements based on evidence and knowledge, then you're probably not working from good data about users and their problems. A reverse engineered guess at why people might need the thing you want to build anyway is not a customer focused problem statement created from good research. Another symptom, it's hard to make decisions without the right evidence, so we tend to fight over opinions. we aren't led by qualitative data and a clear strategy. So it's often, what is a product manager like? What is the engineering lead like? When we pretend to have empathy and wonder, what would the user like? We don't really know. We're guessing and assuming, which is risky. When we have reliable and strong qualitative and quantitative data, our team understands customers and their needs, tasks, and perspectives. We're then more likely to align around how we balance that with the outcomes the business wants for itself. As our project progresses, check in with your company's values. Are your concepts, solutions, and designs trustworthy, honest, ethical, showing respect to customers, empowering them? You would have to understand customers and users well enough to know what would be honest, trustworthy, and valuable to them. If you're not sure, then you're lacking the good evidence that comes from qualitative research. Symptoms that we're working from bad evidence are really clear after we release products and services to the public. But by then, it'll cost us way more to fix the problems we've created. We might lose customers and not be able to win them back. Risks, waste, and the costs of poor quality will be high when we don't notice or care early about bad evidence as a root cause. Symptoms in this case include high support utilization. Is there a wave of support tickets about your change or new feature? Then we didn't create the right feature or solution for an audience we claimed to know well. Perhaps if you add support costs to the project budget, someone will care when we push our problems off on the support team. Negative voice of the customer sentiments are symptoms that should be hard to ignore. Angry tweets and social posts, poor ratings and reviews, and lower customer satisfaction or NPS tell us clearly we got something wrong. It's bad that we're figuring it out this late. It'll be worse if we don't act quickly or at all. What about, did those unhappy customers speak with their dollar and downgrade or leave? Are we seeing lower retention or loyalty? We're not meeting customers' needs, and they're tired of our guesses and the crumbs we thought would be good enough. Let's talk about A/B tests. This is where the A is the product we already have, usually something live that the public can see. B is often a variation of it. We want to test B against A to see which one will work better. An A/B test where B loses is evidence of a bad hypothesis or a problem with our earlier research. An A/B test where B loses tells us that our new idea is worse than the one we already had. We knew our existing product wasn't great, and we were trying to fix or replace it. But we must be working with bad evidence or no evidence if we got this far into a project and we didn't know that B was worse than A. Another clear symptom is that we didn't meet the KPIs or OKRs we set up as part of the project strategy. We missed our goals, and now we have to figure out why. Poor research, the wrong research, not enough research, working from outdated research, working only from desk research. Any of these types of bad evidence are root causes for our disaster projects and poor customer and business outcomes. You might think that these symptoms don't point at research or bad hypotheses as the root cause, but they're really indications that the design or the designer is bad. But a good designer can only work from the knowledge that we have, the strategy of the project, and the qualitative evidence from observations and interviews done by a skilled professional. We can't expect a designer to create the best designs because a survey said people like our idea. What you think is bad design might be bad design, but it might also be a symptom of a real root cause. If it's not a tech debt, if it's not tech debt like a bug, slow site, or bad database, it's a CX or UX problem. And in many cases, the tech problem is perceived by the user as a CX or UX problem. So all roads lead back to the evidence and information we used for our strategies, decisions, and products, services, and experiences. Smarter and more strategic teams care more about the quality of research insights than the number of insights or how fast we got something we could call data, especially if it's bad data that led us astray. Let's talk a little bit about doing research well. Research is your foundation, so it's important that it be done well. Every project should stop and do an exercise around what we think we know about users, their contexts, and their needs. What do we wish we knew? What are we guessing and assuming? Do we have outdated or incorrect information? When we realize what we don't know, it's time for research. The more unanswered questions we have as we allow our project to progress, the more risk we incur and the more expensive it is to fix mistakes later. Therefore, you want to invest in early research as your insurance policy against mistakes, guesses, and uninformed decisions later. There's never a time to do this exercise, the discovery phase knowledge quadrant. You can do it late in a project, especially if the team is wondering why a design didn't work or an A B test failed. But it's best to do this as early as possible as part of your project planning or discovery process. Learn what you don't know so that you're aware of the risk of moving forward without the knowledge you need. Plan for the research that will answer the questions that will shape our strategies, priorities, and decisions. You can find my full video on how to run this exercise by searching YouTube for my channel CX-CC and the number 196 because it was episode 196. A good research process has 6 key phases, where each phase has multiple tasks that can be done well, poorly, or anywhere in between. Every element and decision contributing to poor or flawed research is a risk that we get bad data and send ourselves in the wrong direction. First, we must plan the research study. Yes, even if you were thinking about just asking people in a coffee shop some questions, you should still have a plan. This plan easily springs from the knowledge quadrant exercise we just saw. Now that we realize what we don't know, what assumptions we have, and what we need to know to create better strategies, priorities, and decisions, we can plan the right research to answer these open questions. Our plan includes who our participants will be, how many of them and why, how we will find them, and what payment or reward they will receive for being part of our research study. Second phase, we'll write our discussion guide, which is part of the plan. This is what we will ask people or the tasks we'll watch them do. It's called a guide because it's not a hard script. We do follow it, but we also allow ourselves the opportunity to ask follow-up questions to ensure that we're reaching our research goals. Third, now we must recruit the people we planned to meet. This is harder than it sounds because the more you pull from circles you're already connected to, like friends or family, the more you're talking to people who might want to say what you're hoping to hear. It's best to find strangers who match your target audiences. Fourth phase. Sessions must be executed. This is where your styles and skill as an interviewer or moderator come into play. People with poor or underdeveloped skills can turn good questions into bad research. Fifth phase is analysis and synthesis. Analysis means breaking what we saw and heard into pieces, usually in the form of notes. We might rewatch our recorded sessions and look for things in our notes previously missed. Synthesis brings these pieces together to see where there are themes or patterns. You're looking for how the data you've collected answers your original research questions. And the final phase includes our report and all of our insights and actionable suggestions. This is where we're drawing our final conclusions based on the data we've gathered. Research can go wrong at any moment. If you have a great interviewing style, but you're asking bad questions, your research is flawed. If you have great questions, but you picked the wrong people or not enough people, your research is flawed. If the first phases of your research study went great, but you asked AI to analyze and synthesize your data, and it did a terrible job, or hallucinated, or missed key themes or points, your research is flawed. If the first phases of your research study were great, but your final report or suggestions were manipulated to match what someone was hoping to hear, your research is flawed. Flawed research is often treated as good data, even when it's not. We base strategies, priorities, and decisions on this data and can easily end up going in wrong directions. My company did a project last year for a fintech startup that was targeting millennials. The marketing company they first hired interviewed 8 New York City millennials, all making roughly the same amount of money. That research project is a much longer story, but it went poorly, and then they ended up hiring us. We met 35 millennials from all over the USA in different jobs making different amounts of money. Meanwhile, the client was trying interviews in New York City coffee shops. All three of these research endeavors returned very different data. Which data is the right or best data? Look at how this process was conducted to determine what might be the best and most honest data, evidence, and knowledge. Oop, just checking that we're still live. Looks like we're still live. Excellent. You never know. So let's pretend that we hired great researchers to help us understand our target audiences. We've decided that we want to create something that helps newlyweds around better financial planning. You might learn that newlyweds are unmotivated to do better financial planning. Did you learn why they're unmotivated? You're not at the root causes yet. Don't guess why, learn why. Newlyweds are blocked. But by what? Is it something we can unblock, or is it beyond what our company could do or offer? We can't fix everything. Newlyweds don't care about financial planning. Why not? What do they care about? Newlyweds don't see the problem the way we see the problem. Instead of looking for the people who see things the way you see things, learn more about how your target audiences see this problem and what other real problems they might have. Sometimes a founder or entrepreneur thinks that they've interviewed the wrong people because they didn't hear what they wanted or expected to hear. But perhaps you or your researcher interviewed the correct people. Perhaps you recruited well, or perhaps you learned that who you thought was your target audience really isn't. Your first pivot might be your audience. Part of discovery is that you might discover you're going in the wrong direction. You might discover the problem isn't really a problem, or isn't the problem you thought or assumed it was. Let's imagine that as part of discovery and validation, we think we have to match our proposed solution to the people we met. We think newlyweds need a platform to motivate them around financial planning. Once we've learned about people, their perspectives, and the root causes of what blocks them, we might realize our idea doesn't work. Instead of assuming that you got bad data or talked to the wrong people, remember that what you learned is your data. That is your evidence, even if it's not what you were hoping to hear. Some people would just say, pivot, but I would say, learn before you pivot. This is what discovery is supposed to be. Discovering the realities of people in your target audiences before you rush into ideas or solutions. Disregard what trendy books say. Discovery is exploring and understanding people. Excuse me. Let's try that again. Not the coughing. Discovery is exploring and understanding people, contexts, and systems, how they do tasks now, where that works for them, where there's room for improvement. It's easy to jump from one possible solution to another. Oh, a motivation platform for newlyweds isn't really the right way to go? Well, then we need to give them financial education and saving tips because they're probably not doing the right things for saving. Even then, we only have an idea. We don't have its execution. One execution of financial tips for newlyweds could be telling people they're not saving enough and they need to cut out anything that was a fun or non urgent expense. For example, stop going to Starbucks, don't get your nails done, buy a cheaper cell phone. But will this make people resentful? Are they likely to stick to a plan of deprivation? Another execution of financial tips could be a whole bunch of older white male financial analysts telling people what to do with their money because they're the experts. Is that who newlyweds want to hear from? What did your research tell you about who newlyweds would want to receive advice from? What kind of advice do they want to receive? If you can't answer these, you might have done the wrong research or not enough research. You would need another study to be able to answer these questions. Idea versus execution is another reason why a product, service, or company can fail, even when we think we validated our idea. Research studies take time and cost money, but you must compare that to the time, money, and experience ecosystem trust you will burn when you release the wrong product. When your solution treats people like you really didn't understand their problem and that you don't see problems how they see them. Well, now how much did you waste? You thought you were fast, but you are slow. Here's a good research example. In 2023, my company did a 6-week generative research project for a funded fintech startup that was wondering what would be the best problems to solve for their target audience. This project was generative and exploratory UX qualitative research meets business design and product management, product strategy and discovery through learning more about target audience's behaviors and unmet needs. The client wanted to better understand target audience behaviors and mental models related to a certain topic area, evidence based problem statements that their company can solve, and how we suggested solving them. They wanted us to design their business, including the business model, and they wanted a CX, UX product strategy, including prioritization and a high level roadmap. So we started with the knowledge quadrant, where the client could share their guesses, assumptions, and what they wish they knew about their target audiences. My team also did some research around the domain, including competitors and other tools or systems people might use to accomplish the tasks related to this topic area. Given the topic area, we adjusted the target audience to millennials living in America and self assessing as having some money left over at the end of each month. We decided we couldn't solve poverty, so we wanted to recruit for people who felt like they had at least some money in their pocket. We wrote a session protocol based on 60-minute interviews with each participant. All sessions were one on one and in English. We aimed for 30 interview sessions with observations where possible. This topic area is something people normally do over months or years, so it's not well suited to a diary or observational study. Therefore, we mostly spoke to people about their behaviors, decisions, and processes, and we observed where people were willing to show us some of their tools or workflow. We wrote many problem statements and paired them with high level suggestions of how they might be addressed by our client. Listening to everybody's stories quickly surfaced a set of behavioral typologies rather than traditional personas, which are often not very actionable for most clients. We at Delta CX focus on typologies that reflect commonalities across behaviors, needs, and mental models. we ended up with 5 typologies that also represented a behavioral evolution from Group 1, who wasn't motivated to do much yet, to Group 5, who were our savvy experts. Among other insights, we learned that many of the client's assumptions were partially or wholly incorrect. For example, the client imagined that their MVP might be a paid social network focusing on this topic area. An overwhelming majority of our participants did not want to discuss this topic on social media, and sometimes not with friends or family at all. Some liked the anonymity of Reddit. Therefore, the MVP should not be a social network and certainly not a paid one. We recommend that social media features, if they are included, would require complete anonymity and heavy moderation to build trust and make people feel safe and protected. We delivered everything they asked for, including an ecosystem map, purposefully small and blurry here to keep details of this project vague. But this mapped out all of the different target audiences, possible partnerships, specific executions of ideas, and how the company would make money. We designed this startup's business and created their unique product and service offering. We also created a business model for them that didn't rely on a subscription. This was a 6-week project. Some might say 3 sprints is too long to spend on this. Other people would say that it's beyond incredible that a startup or new venture could learn this much and have this much specific direction in such a relatively short period of time. I believe that no matter how you slice this, we saved this startup a huge amount of risk, waste, and guessing. They'd been having trouble finding product market fit, and we believe that the evidence and actionable suggestions that we brought them will get them much closer more quickly. Let's talk a little bit about task analysis. Many teams start with requirements, user stories, or feature ideas. These ideas are often a guess, assumption, or a hope, sometimes based on a desired user outcome, but more likely based on a desired business outcome. Ideas around functionality become features we plan and roadmap. We feed these ideas into the product world, and we ask UX designers to create wireframes and prototypes for those ideas. Our solution is based on pre-decided features. This is called being feature-oriented. You decide the features first, and everything is planned around that. But what if these aren't a good match to users' needs, tasks, or realities? We may have created a lot of delay, risk, and waste thinking that we're fast. There's a lot of delay, risk, and waste. Sorry, lost my spot. When we hope to find out later that our guesses are good or our guesses are wrong, it might be weeks or months until we get survey results or analytics, and I hope we've picked the right things to measure. Feature-oriented processes are easy to spot because they normally start with build. They assume you can't learn what customers need or prefer until you've released something live to some or all of the target audience. Feature-oriented processes assume that it's not worth the time to try to learn more before just trying your first idea, or they assume that we will guess really well exactly what people need. Instead of being a feature factory, consider another approach called task-oriented design. It's been around for decades and it requires what we research and learn about real users' tasks to be the focal point, their workflows, their unmet needs. Observational research helps us see where tasks are bad or inefficient for people. The same people who will tell you in a survey, focus group, or interview that they like these screens and everything's just fine. The results of observational research help us define the overarching product and UX strategy. Once we have this strategy and a mountain of customer intelligence the research gave us, UX product and engineering can collaborate on prioritizing pain points and opportunities. Product, UX, and engineering can then roadmap and plan their work. Ultimately, the features derive from the solution. The solution can be broken into features, stories, JIRA tickets, backlog items, however your engineering teams want to do it. If you're unfamiliar with task analysis, let's cover it in this one slide, and I prefer it over jobs to be done. Task analysis is normally done after qualitative research, like observing users and interviewing them. You can't do a great task analysis based on surveys or what we guess about people. You don't want to workshop this. Even diary studies can leave out steps or workarounds that the user thinks aren't important to mention. Well, when I say you can't workshop this, I'm saying don't get a workshop together to guess at this. If we had observed people, we would notice the missing puzzle pieces like the workarounds the users didn't mention. Task analysis starts with a researcher creating a flow diagram detailing every step the user takes based on what the researcher observed in the study. This is the what. What did people do? The researcher then adds notes related to the tools, knowledge, and workarounds the users employed to try to accomplish that step better. This is the how of each step. They checked the sticky note they keep at their desk. They went into photo editing software first. They asked their coworker where to find the right form. We also add issues and concerns, anything that might be an obstacle or blocker for this step of the process. Documenting the tools, knowledge, workarounds, issues, concerns, and obstacles give us 6 new categories where we can find behaviors, themes, preferences, unmet needs, insights, and opportunities. Sure, we want to improve all the steps of the process, but we can also make improvements that account for all of these other areas. Researchers then analyze the task flow and what we learned from our observations and interviews. Look for knowledge gaps, the difference between what we assumed people knew and understood and what they actually know or understand. You'll see this in observational research, especially when people use workarounds, get stuck, or give up. Let me give you an example from some more research that my company did in 2021. Our observational research asked people to shop for a particular item, pretending that they have $1,000 to spend and they need a quantity of 125 of this item. Many people grabbed a real calculator or their smartphone calculator and did 1,000 divided by 125 items. They decided they had $8 per item and were surprised when, at the end, they were over budget. Only one participant did the math and said, no, I don't really have $8 per item. I probably have $6 per item because you're going to add setup fees, shipping, and tax. She was right. Not only did we see the calculator used as a tool, but we also saw the knowledge only one person had that shopping for this type of item had a lot of added costs at the end. We then create an optimized task flow by looking at anywhere the system can take workload off the user. This isn't just automation and making the system perform steps of the task. This is also intelligently and deliberately architecting our systems to account for what we expect people to know or remember. Build knowledge into the system. Deliberately architect for where people used outside tools or workarounds and where they had obstacles. For that e-commerce project, we added to the product page a way for people to to enter their total budget. The system would then deduct taxes, shipping, and setup fees and tell you how many of these items you could get for that budget. As you changed color, shipping speed, and other item parameters, the number of items you could get for that budget changed. Not only did this solve multiple problems and fix the tool and knowledge dependency, but we invented something no other competitor was doing. We saw 20 competitors during our research, and nobody had a way to enter your budget and see how many you can get. You can start to see how a technique like this goes far beyond what we tend to know from surveys or A/B tests, and even far beyond typical jobs to be done. If you'd like to learn more about task analysis, just enter Delta CX task analysis into YouTube and you'll find lots of lessons. Task dimensions is what Larry's been calling these elements that he uses in his task analysis. I like to say it's four more horsemen that we want to watch for, especially during observational research. These will end up in that task analysis, like manually intensive. Does a task or a flow have a lot of steps or manual work? High cognitive load. Don't make me think. People don't want to have to figure things out or make sense of your mess. Error prone. It's not enough to give people an error message and hope they solve their own problem. Great customer experiences keep people from ever making that mistake in the first place. Cough, cough, my LinkedIn post today about Deutsche Bahn. And knowledge dependent. Is there something we assumed a user knew, understood, or remembered that they don't? A great example here is when you're trying to pay your bill online and they tell you, what's your account number? Well, you don't know your account number. You know your phone number, you know your email, but the system's demanding your account number. Now you have to stop what you're doing, find an old bill, and find that account number. That was knowledge dependent. In simplest terms, we don't want users to ever meet my four horsemen of bad UX. Registered trademark. They are frustration, confusion, disappointment, and distraction. UX practitioners listen for frustration, confusion, disappointment, and distraction when we're doing research. We check for these in our own architecture and design work. We listen for them when we're doing testing on real users. And of course, we're looking for them in support tickets, complaints, feedback, and other places where users express themselves. We want to make sure that users have an easy, intuitive, and efficient experience. Look for these in your own ideas. Listen for them when observing target audiences. So my closing few slides are beware of common traps. Oh, where's my empathy effect? Hold on. Empathy is a sadly overused word right now, but one of its key meanings is the idea that you will see your target audience's world how they see it, without your prejudices, opinions, assumptions, or guesses. You shouldn't be saying, well, they should learn financial planning and we can help them. Do they want that help? Do they understand why they're not saving more? What do we really know about their situations? What makes them want to plan? What motivates or demotivates them? What blocks them? And is this different across different types of people? Ages, genders, ethnicities, income, being in one or more marginalized groups? Don't make assumptions about people based on demographics. I'm so tired of what companies think I need because I'm a 52-year-old woman. And when those companies try to sell me something for my skin, weight, or menopause, I can tell that they really don't understand me or my day-to-day needs at all. My life and work have endless complexity. How I approach these challenges has nothing to do with my age, gender, or ethnicity. It's about my personality and behavior. But if you didn't research those, you'll probably just try to put me in a bucket with other 50-year-old women. You can't have empathy for someone you haven't studied and taken the time to understand. Let's be careful how we use the word empathy. Maybe you mean you care about people. Maybe you have sympathy for them. But you don't have real empathy as long as you're superimposing yourself, your preferences, your biases, or your worldview onto them. You can't have empathy for people, and you're probably not following any of your company's values if you're not dedicated to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. If your product, service, or experience can't be used by the broad rainbow of people within your target audiences, you might need to have some tough internal conversations about your ethics. Very often, when I ask a startup about accessibility, they often tell me they don't think they have too many blind users. While you certainly well, you certainly won't have any blind users if that's how you think of them. Accessibility covers a wide range of disabilities, diagnoses, and conditions. Will your system work really freaking well for people who don't use a mouse? What about people with dyslexia? Left-handed people, people with ADHD or autism, colorblind people, someone with a hand tremor. Roughly 1/4 of people in both the USA and Europe identify as having at least one disability, and many people have multiple disabilities. I'm sure we can think of someone who doesn't see well, but also doesn't hear well or doesn't move well. We can think of someone struggling with long COVID or cancer treatments and the multiple health problems they have. Don't leave these people out and guess what they need or what will work for them. Don't go with cheap solutions like accessibility overlays, as they're not only widely hated by the disability community, but have been the target of lawsuits because they're not as accessible as they claim. If you want to have empathy for your target audiences, make sure that empathy isn't lip service or theater. Ron Kohavi appeared on Lenny's podcast and said that A/B test failure rates were 92% for Airbnb, 66% for Microsoft, and 50% for Amazon. The bottom of the above image says, it's not about having better product managers or working at a better company. It's the nature of product development. This sounds like, please don't blame us. It's the process. But the process is good, so don't try to change it. Ron also posted to LinkedIn in October 2023 about his time as a VP at Airbnb. Quote, we tried hard to evaluate in A/B tests only things we believed had a relatively high probability of being successful. End quote. Despite this attempt to only test what the team was highly confident about, only 8% of tests were successful. This should sound alarms. Consider the process that leads to an A/B test. We know that A, the product we released, isn't that great. It's badly broken, half-baked, or has serious room for improvement. We know it's not 5 stars out of 5 quality for customers. When an A/B test fails, it's a clear sign that we weren't working from good evidence or data. We understand our customers so little that the B we hypothesized would be an improvement was a measurable, palpable downgrade. We burned time and money by releasing and experimenting with something that performed worse than what we already had. We're cooking up what I call the guessing lasagna. We have opinions, guesses, and assumptions about customers. We layer on guesses about why they do or don't do certain things. We assume guessing will be faster than qualitative research that would answer our open questions. Our next layer of guesses is the solutions we hope will make customers happier, achieve business goals, or on a good day, both. The more guesses we layer on, the more likely it is that one or more of these guesses is incorrect, leading to sometimes foreseeable and avoidable failures. We should consider changing the process if we're experiencing this much failure. A 0% failure rate is impossible, but every company and team should want to minimize failures, risks, and consequences, not normalize them. In my article, Your CX and UX Metrics Are Myopic, I looked at the danger of measuring for short term wins, as we often see in A B testing. We might be testing a small change and we want to see if people buy more often, or whatever metric we're trying to measure. We see that lift, we call the test a success, and we go more or fully in on the winner. But do we ever measure this in the longer term or across the end to end journey? The customer's experience doesn't stop when they check out or do the one thing you're hoping they'll do. There are actions, subtasks, and future tasks that can happen later. What if your winning A B test created higher value purchases but led to more complaints, angry tweets, or returns? Is that variant still the winner? What if your winning variant saw higher conversion with more people buying, but the customers coming through that variant were less likely to purchase again later? These can all be measured, but we rarely measure these. I suggest that anything you measure be looked at over a longer period of time and a longer customer journey arc. If your short term metric winner has a negative ripple effect to longer term metrics, we should be smart enough to be watching for that before we declare the variant a winner. Another trap I want to mention is, and this is my last slide, is when non-researchers try to do research themselves. People tend to think that research is easy. Talking to people is easy. And I like to talk to people, so I can do research myself. But unfortunately, here we are on Arrogance Mountain. The research a non-researcher will do is often quite different from what a professional, qualified, or career CX or UX researcher will do. A non researcher will sometimes seek out some articles or videos on how to do better research. Sadly, a lot of what is out there has been created by non researchers. I'm shocked how many novices are telling other novices what to do, and the advice is often quite poor. I once saw an article on Medium about how to write better research questions. The author's better questions were actually still quite poor. When I checked the author on LinkedIn, he was an engineer. He'd never had a research job. Many of the same problems exist when an author or company offers you a template or canvas. The pitch is often that you can fill in the boxes, you can create your product strategy, or decide what features to build or figure out your solution. These templates are rarely customer centric. You often start with what problems does the business want to solve, which is typically a problem the business wants to solve for itself. The target users might show up somewhere later on the canvas, if at all, typically as the guinea pig or recipient of whatever you've decided you're going to offer them. If you apply critical thinking and ask tough questions, most canvases and templates fall apart quickly. And a few resources for people who wanted to remember where to go for some of the things I talked about. The two YouTube channels we have, CX-CC and our old one, Delta CX. Reminder to join our Patreon, even at the free level, patreon.com/CXCC. Don't forget my Medium articles are on rbefore.d.com. You can subscribe there. And of course, if you haven't had a free coaching session with me, remember that you can get one. Everybody gets one free one, deltacx.link/coaching. And with that, that was the webinar that, I guess a live webinar that I did for a group recently, and I wanted to share it with you and make sure we got it on the YouTube channel. So, we'll see if anybody has any questions. If not, we can certainly wrap up for today, and I will flame us out of here. Thanks to the people who stayed live and watched the way through. Thanks to the people who saw some of those slides before and hung out for the ones you hadn't seen before. And again, I would love for people to be sharing this video out, especially with startup founders, entrepreneurs, companies trying to innovate. There's so many important conversations we need to have about the quality of our research and some of the risk of being hypothesis first and jumping straight into just trying our ideas out. It's just not the scientific method. Okay, so I see we do have some people watching live. Thanks again for sticking around. But it looks like we don't have any questions. So either my live question system isn't working, for which I apologize, or there just aren't any questions. So I would say if you're watching this later on YouTube, please leave a comment below if you have any comments or questions on this, and give us a thumbs up on YouTube to help us out with the algorithm. And I will wind us down and flame us out for the evening. And let's see, today is Monday, so I hope to see everybody tomorrow for our Q&A AMA, where I take your questions live. As always, you can check our event calendar, CX. I'm sleepy. It's after midnight here. cxcc.to/events will lead you to our event calendar. Thank you, Marielene. Our event calendar where you can see what else we're going to be doing live. And nearly everything in that calendar is free to join live. And then everything will be on YouTube later. So thanks again, everybody. Have a super day or night. And I'll hope to see you tomorrow at Q&A AMA.